Hi everybody, it's Honest John again. It was 1975, maybe 76, just a little bit before I moved out here to California from Rhode Island. And some of you might have heard of a band called Boston. They were very hot at the time. They just released an album, and the album was fantastic because these guys were real good in the studio. They weren't that good live, but we didn't know that then. So my brother and I got the word that Boston was playing at Rocky Point Amusement Park, small amusement park in Rhode Island. And all you had to do to get in free was bring 5 empty packs of Twizzlers. Show them at the door. You know, Twizzlers candy? It's sort of like licorice, but not quite. And show them at the door and you get in. So my brother and I went out and we bought the Twizzlers, and then we drove to the park smoking Acapulco Gold, which was really, really good weed for that day, for that time. And when we got to the park, in the parking lot, we did a bunch of hallucinogenics. I don't remember exactly what. I think THC was one of them, a couple other things. We got really fucked up. And then we went into the park, and the concert wasn't for about another hour and a half, so by the time the concert started, we were peaking. It was held in a building that was used as a roller skating rink. So the acoustics were absolutely terrible. And as I mentioned, Boston, as brilliant as they were in the studio, were just as bad live. So they were too loud, for one thing, for the building. The sound was mush. The vocals were terrible. And the hallucinogens, they chimed in by heightening our awareness and making us extremely aware of how bad this band was. After a couple of songs, I turned to my brother and I said, "I'm leaving." And he looked at me and laughed and he said, "Oh, it's not just me." And we laughed and we walked out into the park. And we were way too fucked up to go on any of the rides. I mean, even a merry-go-round would have probably been too much for us. So we walked around and we sat down on a bench and we watched the people and we watched the rides, you know, especially the fast ones, because they'd leave traces. Sometimes we'd have to turn away. It was too intense. And then all of a sudden the park went dead still. Right? There were people still walking and talking, but all the rides stopped. And it was much quieter. And then an announcer came on and announced the Flying Wallendas. Now, for those of you who don't know, Flying Wallendas are legendary. They're legendary in the circus world. They've been doing their high wire act for years. And it just so happened that the bench that we sat down on was right near where they were going to do their act. As a matter, nobody could be in front of us. We were in the front. And anybody else had to stand behind us. We had the perfect view. We were so close that we had to look up. We had to tilt our heads to a point where it was actually a little bit uncomfortable while we were watching them. And the gear that they were on, it was a tightrope between 2 platforms. Very simple. And there were 5 of them, and they each took turn going out and doing tricks, sometimes alone and sometimes in combinations with each other. And they you know, they do amazing things. They do somersaults on the wire and flips and ride bicycles and stand on each other's shoulders. Amazing shit. And their last trick of their act was 3 of them two brothers on bicycles, were on bicycles, and they had a pole that lowered over their shoulders, and it went back to the next guy, and it was over his shoulders, and so there was about maybe 10 feet of distance between the two brothers. They were on bicycles, and their sister came out with a chair, and she climbed up onto the pole that went between them and started doing all kinds of balancing tricks on the chair. And I guess it took her a little longer to do her routine than it usually does, because as they were getting close to the end, one of the brothers on the rear bike shouted, "Hurry up, I can't hold it." And the thing is that it's pretty hard to hurry up on a tightrope. You know, you can't just all of a sudden go into speed mode there. You have to still be careful. So the two brothers pedaled until the first bike reached the platform. The rear bike, with the brother that was already struggling, was still out on the tight wire. And you could see his legs trembling, you could see the muscles in his neck straining, and the look of pain on his face. And so the sister, she got off as quickly as she could, but it still took what seemed like an eternity to get off. And when she was clear, they lifted the pole, and the brother that was still on the tight wire, without that pole holding him, started rolling backwards. And then he steadied himself and put his head down and just pedaled like a madman and got to that platform, and his family grabbed him and the bike and they got him off it, and there was a collective sigh of relief from the crowd. As a matter of fact, I realized that I'd been holding my breath for a really long time. And at that point, me and my brother had decided that we had just had enough excitement for the day. And we left the park. And we drove to the water's edge and just looked out at the ocean to calm down. Yesterday, Nik Wallenda walked across the Grand Canyon. A remarkable feat. And I think it was like 1,400 feet he walked on his tightrope. And the canyon was, you know, 1,300 feet below him or something like that, right? And so it would have been quite a fall. And so it was a spectacular feat. A spectacular thing to do, a very brave thing to do. But in a month or two, it will be a vague and hazy memory for me. Well, I still remember that night at Rocky Point like it was yesterday. Thanks for listening.